Former Delta Force Commander Isaiah Wells stands over Officer Ryan Keller, who begs for mercy in an abandoned warehouse. Keller's partner, Officer Sean Miller, lies unconscious nearby. Isaiah holds a flash drive containing evidence that will destroy both officers' lives. Keller pleads, claiming he didn't know the dog was a service animal. Isaiah calmly responds, "When you shot Phoenix, you didn't just kill my dog. You awakened something I buried after Fallujah. Where are you watching from today?" Drop your location in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you want to see how this decorated black veteran brings justice to the racist cops who never imagined the storm they were unleashing. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Isaiah Wells stepped off the Greyhound bus into the warm Michigan summer air, scanning the Lakeside terminal with the hypervigilance that 15 years of Delta Force operations had permanently etched into his psyche. At 38, the black veteran's powerful frame still carried the discipline of military life, though the slight limp from his final tour in Afghanistan hinted at the price he'd paid. Beside him, Phoenix, his Belgian Malinois service dog, stayed alert, amber eyes tracking the same sight lines as his handler. The dog wasn't just a companion, he was Isaiah's anchor to reality when the memories of Fallujah, Kandahar, and a dozen classified locations threatened to pull him under. Isaiah had returned to Lakeside not by choice, but by circumstance. His grandmother's passing had left him her modest home in the historically Black Oak Heights neighborhood, an area now being rapidly transformed by gentrification. White couples pushing $1,000 strollers now passed century-old barbershops where black men had gathered for generations. As the taxi pulled up to the weathered two-story house with its small but meticulously maintained garden, Isaiah felt like a stranger in the place he'd once called home. The neighbors watched with undisguised curiosity as the tall black man with military posture and a service dog unlocked the door to Miss Eloise Wells' house. Isaiah spent the first week establishing routines, the structured approach that had kept him alive in combat zones now applied to civilian life. 5-mile runs at dawn with Phoenix, breakfast at 7, therapy sessions at the VA on Tuesdays and Thursdays with Dr. Harris, a Vietnam veteran who recognized the shadows behind Isaiah's measured responses. The rest of his time went to restoring his grandmother's house and training Phoenix. Yet despite his discipline, Isaiah couldn't ignore the subtle hostilities that greeted him daily. The way the clerk at Thompson's grocery followed him through the aisles. How white women clutched their purses tighter when he passed. The security guard who approached him in the park asking to see Phoenix's service animal credentials for the third time in 2 weeks. "It's worse than when you left," said Ms. Loretta Johnson, his grandmother's best friend who lived 3 doors down. They sat on her porch drinking sweet tea as the evening cooled. "All these new people moving in acting like we're trespassing in our own neighborhood. Then the police started coming around more, not to help us, mind you." Isaiah nodded, having already noticed the increased patrol car presence. "My grandson got stopped 3 times last month just walking home from basketball practice," Ms. Loretta continued. "Good boy honors student. They still put him face down on the sidewalk the last time. Said he matched a description." Isaiah's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. Phoenix sensed the tension pressing his warm weight against Isaiah's leg. "You should come by the community center," said Darius Williams when Isaiah met him at the local farmers market. Darius ran youth programs and knew Isaiah's grandmother from church. "We're documenting these incidents, trying to show the pattern. The 2 worst are Officers Keller and Miller, always together, always targeting our people." Isaiah filed the names away mentally but made no commitment. He'd seen enough conflict. His plan was to heal, perhaps find work in security, live quietly. That resolution was tested the following week during a community policing event at the local park. The department had set up a friendly basketball game, officers versus local teens with hot dogs and photo opportunities. Isaiah went at Ms. Loretta's insistence, Phoenix always at his side. Officers Ryan Keller and Sean Miller. The community liaison announced, introducing 2 patrolmen. Keller was tall and broad-shouldered, with close-cropped blonde hair and cold blue eyes. Miller was shorter, wiry, with a perpetual smirk beneath his auburn mustache. Both wore their uniforms like armor gun hands, never straying far from their weapons. Their eyes locked onto Isaiah, immediately cataloging him as military from his bearing alone. When the officers approached during the cookout, their smiles didn't reach their eyes. "Nice dog," Officer Keller said, not addressing Isaiah directly. "Military working dog. Service animal," Isaiah replied, his voice measured. "I'm Isaiah Wells." "You new around here?" Miller asked, his tone suggesting Isaiah was an intruder rather than a returning native. "Just moved back. My grandmother left me her house." "Which house is that exactly?" Keller pressed his notebook, appearing. Isaiah provided the address, recognizing the questioning for what it was. Not friendly conversation, but intelligence gathering. "Well, welcome back to Lakeside," Keller said finally, his tone suggesting the opposite of welcome. "It's changed since whenever you left, getting nicer. We make sure it stays that way." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Phoenix sensed it too, his body stiffening though he made no sound. Isaiah simply nodded, his face revealing nothing of the assessment he was making of both officers. Points of entry and exit. Response times. Vulnerabilities. The tactical awareness that had kept him alive across 4 continents activated automatically. As the officers moved away, Isaiah overheard Miller mutter to his partner, "Another one moving back in. There goes the neighborhood improvement." Isaiah absorbed the comment without reaction, but something shifted inside him. The watchful, waiting posture he'd maintained since returning home transformed into something more focused. He began to observe the officers with the same attention to detail he'd once applied to hostile compounds in distant lands. Not out of aggression, but from the ingrained habit of identifying threats. What he didn't realize then was how quickly the threat would escalate, or how it would force him to become the man he'd tried to leave behind when he boarded that bus to Michigan. 3 weeks after the community policing event, Isaiah was returning from his therapy session when he noticed a commotion outside the convenience store at the corner of Maple and Washington. Officers Keller and Miller had 4 black teenagers pressed against the wall, legs spread in search position. From the teenagers' clean-cut appearances and backpacks, they were clearly students, not troublemakers. "I told you to empty your pockets, boy," Officer Miller was saying, his hand resting on his holstered weapon as he loomed over the youngest teen, who couldn't have been more than 14. "We got a report of shoplifting." The store owner, Mr. Patel, stood in the doorway looking distressed. "Officers, these boys are regular customers. They didn't take anything. I would know." Keller turned on the Indian man with a scowl. "You want to file a complaint about how we do our jobs? We can discuss your business licenses instead." Mr. Patel fell silent, his eyes dropping. The youngest teen was shaking now, and the oldest one, around 17, spoke up. "Sir, we were just buying snacks after study group. We have receipts." "Did I ask you to speak?" Miller snapped, taking a step closer. "You got real mouthy for someone in your position." The confrontation was escalating rapidly. Isaiah assessed the situation, knowing intervention carried risks, but unable to simply walk past. Phoenix stayed close as Isaiah approached, making sure to keep his hands visible. "Officers," he said calmly, "I'm Isaiah Wells. I live 4 blocks from here. Is there something I can help with?" Both officers turned, recognition and annoyance flashing across their faces. "This isn't your business, Wells," Keller said. "Move along." "I know these young men from the community center," Isaiah lied smoothly. "They volunteer with the youth reading program. I can vouch for their character." It was a calculated approach, establishing the teens as known individuals rather than anonymous targets. The 4 boys looked at him with confusion that quickly shifted to desperate hope. Miller stepped away from the teenagers, moving into Isaiah's personal space instead. "You need to show some ID right now. What are you doing in this area?" The question carried heavy implication. Despite being just blocks from his home, Isaiah was being treated as an intruder. He produced his driver's license, maintaining eye contact. "Just returning from the VA hospital. My home is on Elm Street." Miller snatched the license, radioing in the information. While they waited, Keller maintained his position, blocking the teenagers from leaving. "Military, huh?" Miller said after receiving confirmation through his radio. "Delta Force impressive." His tone suggested the opposite of admiration. "What brings a big war hero like you back to this neighborhood couldn't make it in the real world." Isaiah remained impassive. Family ties. His controlled response seemed to irritate Miller further. "Well, your family neighborhood is changing. Lot of investment coming in. New kind of people." The implication was clear. Phoenix sensed Isaiah's internal tension and pressed against his leg a grounding presence. Keller finally stepped back from the teenagers. "You boys can go, this time, but we'll be watching." As the relieved teens hurried away, nodding, grateful thanks to Isaiah, Keller turned his attention to the veteran. "You seem to have appointed yourself some kind of neighborhood watchdog, Wells. That's our job." "I'm just a concerned citizen," Isaiah replied evenly. "Let's keep it that way," Miller added, handing back the license. "Military record or not, you don't want to make enemies of Lakeside PD, especially in a neighborhood in transition. Accidents happen." The threat hung in the air as the officers returned to their patrol car. Isaiah memorized the unit number and watched them drive away before continuing home. The encounter confirmed what he'd been hearing. It also triggered something in him that he'd kept dormant since returning to civilian life: strategic thinking. That evening, Isaiah created a small notebook documenting the incident in precise detail. Time, location, officer statements, witness names. Old habits from mission reports. The following week, the patrol car with officers Keller and Miller began appearing on Isaiah's street with suspicious frequency. 3, sometimes 4 times daily, slowing as they passed his house. Phoenix would grow alert before the car even turned the corner, his ears perking up at the specific engine sound. Isaiah attended the community meeting at the First Baptist Church where residents voiced concerns about police harassment. From his seat in the back, he noted officers Keller and Miller standing along the wall, openly recording with their phones those who spoke up. Their eyes narrowed when they spotted Isaiah. The message was clear: they were watching, and there would be consequences for those who complained. Isaiah began carrying his phone ready to record interactions. He installed security cameras at his grandmother's house, positioning them discreetly. When he walked Phoenix, he took different routes at different times, cataloging patrol patterns and blind spots. The community noticed his presence too. After Isaiah intervened when Officer Miller was aggressively questioning an elderly black man about an expired vehicle registration, word spread. People nodded respectfully when he passed. Ms. Loretta brought him sweet potato pie and updates on police activity. Darius invited him to speak to the teenage boys at the community center about careers in the military, though Isaiah kept his actual operations experience vague. "Those officers drive by the center whenever we have programs for the boys," Darius told him after one session. "Last month they stopped and frisked our college scholarship recipients as they were leaving in their dress clothes, said they were looking for gang activity." Isaiah's notebook grew thicker. He began transcribing his observations into a secure digital format each night, uploading encrypted backups, not out of paranoia but from the professional habit of thorough intelligence gathering. The tension continued building through the summer and into early fall. Isaiah caught Officer Keller taking photos of him at the farmer's market. 2 days later, he noticed a sedan with tinted windows parked across from his house for 3 hours. Phoenix became increasingly agitated whenever patrol cars approached, picking up on something in their presence that raised his protective instincts. Isaiah found himself reflexively checking sight lines, maintaining awareness of cover and concealment options, carrying himself with the vigilant readiness that had defined his operational stance in conflict zones. He didn't want another war, but increasingly it felt like one was being brought to his doorstep. The inevitable flashpoint came on an unusually warm October evening as crimson and gold leaves skittered across the sidewalks of Oak Heights. Isaiah had just finished his final training session with Phoenix, for the day the dog responding perfectly to every command, a partnership built on absolute trust. As dusk settled over Lakeside, they set out for their evening walk through Riverside Park. Neither Isaiah nor Phoenix could have known it would be their last walk together. The park's lampposts cast long shadows across the walking path as Isaiah and Phoenix maintained their usual measured pace. Families were packing up picnic supplies. A few joggers circled the pond, and the distant sound of a saxophone drifted from the bandstand where a local musician practiced. It was the kind of ordinary moment Isaiah had fought for in distant lands, the peaceful normalcy that most took for granted. Phoenix trotted beside him, alert, but relaxed his service vest, identifying him as more than a pet. The sound of tires on gravel made both man and dog turn. The white and blue Lakeside Police Department cruiser rolled to a stop on the park access road, headlights illuminating them in harsh white light. Officers Keller and Miller emerged deliberately, keeping the headlights at their backs, standard intimidation tactics that Isaiah recognized instantly. "Evening, officers," Isaiah said evenly, stopping with Phoenix at perfect heel position. "Is there a problem?" "Got a call about suspicious activity in the park," Officer Miller said, hand resting on his holstered weapon as he approached. "Someone matching your description." "I'm walking my service dog," Isaiah replied, gesturing to Phoenix's clearly visible vest. "Same as I do every evening." "Pretty late for a walk," Keller commented, circling to Isaiah's left while Miller approached from the right. Classic flanking maneuver. "Seems like you're casing the area." "It's 7:30, Isaiah pointed out, remaining calm despite recognizing the deliberate provocation. "The park closes at 10. "You carrying any weapons, Wells?" Miller demanded, ignoring Isaiah's reasonable response. "Need to check you for everyone's safety." "No weapons," Isaiah said, knowing any resistance would escalate the situation. "Just my phone and Phoenix's treats." Keller moved closer, his eyes cold. "You know we've been hearing complaints about you, sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, acting like you owned the neighborhood." "I'm a resident exercising my legal rights," Isaiah stated, "just like anyone else." Miller laughed, a harsh sound that made Phoenix's ears flatten slightly. "See, that's what I'm talking about. You people move back into a neighborhood that's finally improving and act entitled." The racial implication was unmistakable. "My family has lived here for 3 generations," Isaiah responded, his voice still measured despite the deliberate provocations. "My grandmother owned her home outright. And now the property values are finally going up since people like us started moving in," Keller said, stepping closer. "But here you come bringing down the tone of the neighborhood, scaring the new residents." Phoenix sensed the mounting tension, staying close to Isaiah's leg, vigilant but disciplined. "I'm going to continue my walk now, officers," Isaiah said, preparing to step around them, "unless I'm being detained for something specific." Miller moved directly into his path. "Actually, we need to see some ID right now." "On what grounds?" Keller's face hardened. "You refusing to comply with a lawful order." The situation was deteriorating exactly as they wanted. Isaiah slowly reached for his wallet, maintaining eye contact with Miller. "I'm complying, just clarifying my rights." "Your kind always wants to talk about rights," Keller muttered loud enough to be heard. As Isaiah produced his driver's license, Miller snatched it and deliberately dropped it on the ground. "Oops, pick it up." It was a schoolyard bully's tactic designed to force submission. Isaiah recognized it for what it was, but also understood the danger of the situation. He started to bend down when Miller shoved him hard against the patrol car. "I said pick it up now," Phoenix responded to the aggression against his handler with a warning bark, not lunging, but alerting as he'd been trained. Isaiah commanded immediately, "Phoenix, stay." The dog obeyed instantly, holding his position despite his protective instincts. Officer Keller's hand went to his weapon. "Control your animal." "He is controlled," Isaiah said firmly. "He's a trained service dog responding to perceived threat. He won't attack unless I'm in danger." Something shifted in Keller's expression, then a calculated look that sent warning signals through Isaiah's combat-honed instincts. "That dog looks aggressive to me," Keller said, drawing his weapon with practiced speed. "I feel threatened." Everything slowed down for Isaiah in that moment. He saw Keller's finger moving to the trigger, saw Phoenix standing perfectly still, as trained, saw Miller's smirk of anticipation. "Phoenix is a service animal," Isaiah stated clearly, loudly enough for the nearby jogger to hear. "He's not a threat. Please don't—" The shots were deafening in the quiet park. 1, 2, 3 rounds fired at point-blank range into Phoenix's body. The Belgian Malinois made a single confused yelp before collapsing, blood spreading rapidly across his service vest. Isaiah's world imploded. Every combat instinct screamed to neutralize the threat to take down both officers with the lethal efficiency that had made him legendary in Delta Force. His body actually began the motion muscle memory from 1,000 operations activating. But he stopped himself with supreme effort, freezing in place as Phoenix's blood pooled on the walkway. "Phoenix," he whispered, moving toward his fallen companion. "Stay where you are," Miller shouted, drawing his weapon as well. That animal was aggressive and threatening officer safety. The jogger had stopped, phone raised, clearly recording. "Hey, that dog wasn't doing anything," he called out. "Put that phone away," Keller shouted at the witness. "This is police business." As the jogger backed away, Keller turned to Isaiah with cold satisfaction. "On the ground now, hands behind your head." Moving mechanically, Isaiah complied, his eyes never leaving Phoenix's rapidly stilling form. The dog's amber eyes found his confusion and trust still visible as the light in them dimmed. "He's dying," Isaiah said, his voice hollow. "Let me help him." "Shut up," Miller said, roughly handcuffing Isaiah. That animal was a public menace. Once secured, they forced Isaiah to kneel beside Phoenix, watching helplessly as his companion's breathing grew more labored. "Please," Isaiah said, something breaking inside him. "He's a service animal. Let me call a vet." "Looks like a dangerous animal to me," Keller replied, nudging Phoenix with his boot. "Probably should have had him muzzled." Phoenix's eyes remained fixed on Isaiah, unwavering loyalty even as his life ebbed away. His final breath came as a soft whimper, body shuddering once before going still. Something within Isaiah died in that moment too. Miller leaned down, his mouth close to Isaiah's ear. "That's what happens when you don't know your place," he whispered. "Should have stayed wherever you came from, war hero." They kept Isaiah handcuffed for nearly an hour, forcing him to watch as Phoenix's body grew cold. Other officers arrived, responding to Keller's call about an aggressive animal threatening officer safety. The jogger with the phone was nowhere to be seen. When they finally removed the handcuffs, Isaiah asked, "Can I take him home for burial?" Keller smiled thinly. "That's evidence now. Department protocol." They refused to tell him where Phoenix's body would be taken. No citations were issued, no paperwork provided. When Isaiah requested the body camera footage the next day, the department claimed technical malfunctions had prevented recording. 3 days later, when he formally inquired about Phoenix's remains, a desk sergeant informed him that biohazard protocol had already been followed. Phoenix was gone, disposed of like garbage. Do you believe what these officers did was an isolated incident or part of a systematic problem? Comment number 1. If you think this type of racial targeting happens regularly in policing, or number 2, if you believe these were just bad individual officers. What would you have done in Isaiah's position? Remember to hit that like button if you're feeling the building tension in this story, and subscribe to see justice unfold. Now ask yourself, how far would you go if someone destroyed the one thing keeping your deepest traumas at bay? The night after Phoenix's killing, Isaiah sat motionless in his darkened living room, the spot where the dog's bed had been, now a void as empty as the one inside him. Sleep was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Phoenix's trusting gaze as life drained away. The images blended with older horrors: the young soldier in his unit, who died in his arms outside Fallujah, the children caught in crossfire during an extraction gone wrong in Syria, the hospital bombed minutes after his team had evacuated the patients. Without Phoenix's grounding presence, the careful walls Isaiah had built between past and present crumbled. He startled at every sound, his hand reaching automatically for a weapon that wasn't there. Twice he found himself crouched in defensive position without remembering how he got there. The VA therapist Dr. Harris called it a catastrophic setback when Isaiah described Phoenix's killing in their emergency session. "Your service animal was your primary coping mechanism." He explained, genuine concern in his weathered face. "Without that support, your PTSD symptoms are resurfacing at full strength." Isaiah nodded mechanically, not mentioning the darker thoughts circling his mind. The tactical assessments of both officers, the vulnerabilities he'd already identified, the muscle memory of operations that had left enemies of the state as cooling bodies in distant lands. Dr. Harris prescribed stronger medication and more frequent sessions, but Isaiah knew the clinical approach wouldn't address what was happening inside him. Something fundamental had shifted when those bullets tore through Phoenix. A door had opened to the man he'd been in combat zones, the calculating precision with which he'd executed missions that would never appear in any official record. The following morning, Isaiah began methodically pursuing every official channel for justice. He filed a formal complaint with the Lakeside Police Department documenting Phoenix's status as a registered service animal and the officer's unprovoked aggression. The desk sergeant took the paperwork with obvious disinterest. "We'll look into it," she said, her tone suggesting the opposite. Next, he contacted local media outlets. The newspaper reporter sounded initially interested but called back hours later. "Sorry, Mr. Wells. Editor says it's not newsworthy. Just a dog, you know. Maybe try the animal rights people." The local TV stations didn't even return his calls. Isaiah then approached 3 different lawyers. The first, an older white man with political aspirations, declined before Isaiah finished explaining. "No body cam footage, no witnesses willing to come forward your word against 2 officers. Not a case I can win." The second lawyer, a younger black woman with a reputation for civil rights cases, was more sympathetic but equally pessimistic. "I'd take it if I thought we could get anywhere," she explained. "But without evidence, it's virtually impossible to overcome qualified immunity. They'll claim they feared for their safety, and courts almost always side with officers." The third simply quoted a retainer fee far beyond Isaiah's means. Each rejection increased the cold clarity forming in Isaiah's mind. The system was designed to protect Keller and Miller, not deliver justice for Phoenix. The nightmares intensified. In one particularly vivid episode, Isaiah found himself back in the bombed-out apartment building in Mosul, where his team had cornered a high-value target. But when he entered the final room, it was Officers Keller and Miller waiting with their weapons trained on Phoenix. He woke up screaming, soaked in sweat, the phantom sound of gunshots echoing in his ears. Ms. Loretta brought food he couldn't eat and sat with him on the porch. "This isn't the first time they've done something like this," she said quietly. "Marcus Jones' boy got beaten so bad last year he still can't walk right. They said he was resisting. He was 13, coming home from school." Isaiah nodded, absorbing the information like the intelligence briefings he'd once received before missions. "Has anyone successfully filed complaints against these officers?" he asked. Ms. Loretta's bitter laugh told him everything. Complaints disappear. Witnesses change their stories after visits from patrol cars. People who push too hard find themselves with broken windows or worse. Isaiah visited the community center where Darius confirmed the pattern. "Keller and Miller have at least 15 complaints that I know of, all from black residents. Nothing ever sticks. Word is, they're protected by someone higher up." The tactical part of Isaiah's mind, the part trained to analyze threats and develop countermeasures, began constructing a mental map of the situation. Not emotional, but methodical. After everyone had gone to bed that night, Isaiah drove to the police station and parked across the street, watching the shift change. He observed Keller and Miller emerging laughing together as they headed to a nearby bar. He followed at a distance, noting their casual brutality in small things, the way Miller shoulder-checked a homeless man without breaking stride, how Keller intimidated the bartender into free drinks. After they left, Isaiah approached the bartender. "Those officers regulars here?" The man glanced nervously at the door. "Look, I don't want trouble." "Just curious," Isaiah said, sliding a 20 across the bar. "Seem like they've got quite the reputation." The bartender pocketed the money and leaned closer. "They come in most nights after shift, always throwing their weight around. Last week they were bragging about shooting some black guy's dog. Said it was, quote, one less aggressive beast in the neighborhood. Meant the guy as much as the dog from how they were talking." Isaiah thanked him and left something hardening further inside him. The final confirmation came 3 days later when Isaiah, acting on information from Darius, found the police report from the incident in a dumpster behind the station. The blood-stained document described Phoenix as an unmuzzled aggressive animal that charged officers threatening bodily harm. Every word a lie, every detail fabricated to justify murder. Isaiah returned home and retrieved Phoenix's collar from the dresser drawer where he'd placed it. The tags still carried traces of dried blood. He held it in his hands, turning it over and over as he sat at his kitchen table. On the wall hung his grandmother's favorite scripture, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." Beside it, his shadow box of military honors, including the Distinguished Service Cross and multiple Purple Hearts, testament to missions that had taken him to the darkest corners of human conflict. Isaiah set the collar down and pulled out a notebook. In precise military shorthand he wrote, "Officers Ryan Keller and Sean Miller, Lakeside Police Department. Deliberate execution of service animal Phoenix, October 17th. No official recourse available. Alternative approach required." Then on the next line, words that would have been immediately recognized by anyone who had served alongside him in Delta Force. Mission parameters, intelligence gathering, target isolation, systematic pressure, full exposure. He closed the notebook and placed Phoenix's collar beside his medals. "They thought they killed a dog," Isaiah whispered into the empty house. "They actually killed the last peaceful part of me." That night, for the first time since the shooting, Isaiah slept without nightmares. His mind had shifted into operational mode, a state of focused clarity that had carried him through the most dangerous missions of his military career. When he woke before dawn, he began transforming the spare bedroom into what Delta operators called a TOC Tactical Operations Center. The war hero, who had returned seeking peace, was gone. In his place stood the man enemies in a dozen countries had learned to fear a ghost who moved through the shadows, leaving only the consequences of his passing as evidence he had ever been there at all. The spare bedroom in Isaiah's grandmother's house underwent a transformation that would have been familiar to anyone who had served with him in Delta Force. The floral wallpaper remained, but now it was partially covered by detailed maps of Lakeside, with key locations marked the police station, City Hall, Officers Keller and Miller's patrol routes, and their personal residences, which Isaiah had identified through careful research. A second-hand desk supported 3 laptops, one running continuous searches on both officers, another monitoring police radio frequencies, and the third maintaining secure communications through channels Isaiah still had access to from his military days. On a corkboard, Isaiah built a relationship map showing department hierarchy, known associates of both officers, and potential pressure points. The methodical approach wasn't driven by emotion, though the grief and rage remained. This was the calculated precision that had made Isaiah exceptional in special operations, the ability to compartmentalize feelings and focus entirely on mission objectives. His first week was dedicated purely to intelligence gathering. Isaiah established surveillance positions near locations the officers frequented, photographing their interactions and noting patterns. He observed Officer Keller meeting regularly with a man in an expensive suit outside City Hall, envelopes changing hands. He documented Officer Miller's habit of visiting a particular doctor's office monthly, emerging with prescription bottles that he sometimes sold to a contact behind the bowling alley. Through careful observation, Isaiah confirmed their personal vehicles. Keller drove a black Ford F-150 with custom wheels, while Miller preferred a blue Dodge Charger with tinted windows. Both lived alone Keller in a recently renovated condo downtown Miller in a small ranch house on the outskirts. Next, Isaiah focused on their personalities and vulnerabilities. Officer Keller projected alpha male confidence but showed signs of financial strain. His truck had been repossessed once before the expensive suit man had intervened. He gambled at an underground poker game every Thursday night, often drinking heavily when he lost. Officer Miller was the more volatile of the two, quick to anger and prone to mood swings that suggested substance abuse issues. He filled prescriptions at 3 different pharmacies, a classic technique to avoid detection for medication abuse. "They're definitely protected from above," said Jasmine Scott when Isaiah carefully approached her at a coffee shop downtown. Jasmine was an investigative journalist with the regional paper who had attempted to write about police misconduct in Lakeside before her editor shut it down. Isaiah had identified her through his research and arranged what appeared to be an accidental meeting. "I've been tracking complaints against Lakeside PD for 18 months. She continued, keeping her voice low. "Keller and Miller have the most by far, but nothing ever sticks. It's like their files get scrubbed regularly." "You have documentation?" Isaiah asked, maintaining a casual demeanor despite his intense interest. Jasmine studied him carefully. "Maybe, but I need to know who I'm talking to and why you care. Asking questions about those two has consequences." Isaiah shared a carefully edited version of Phoenix's killing, emphasizing his status as a veteran seeking justice for his service animal while omitting any hint of his specialized military background or current activities. Jasmine's expression hardened as he described the shooting. "That tracks with their pattern. They target black residents specifically, especially those who appear to have resources or status. It's like they're trying to drive certain people out of gentrifying neighborhoods." She hesitated, then made a decision. "I can share some of what I've gathered, but be careful. My last source had his home burglarized the day after I interviewed him. Nothing taken except his documentation of police harassment. I can protect myself," Isaiah assured her, the understatement of his career. They arranged a secure communication method with Isaiah, providing her an encrypted email address connected to one of his laptops. Later that week, Isaiah took his intelligence gathering to the next level. Using equipment purchased with cash from electronics stores in 3 different counties, he established surveillance on both officers' homes. The devices were military-grade, similar to what he'd used on operations capable of capturing conversations through windows from significant distances. The first night yielded critical information as Officer Keller received a visitor, the same expensive suit man from City Hall. "Commissioner Wilson says the numbers need to improve before the next council meeting," the man said as they sat on Keller's patio. "Property values can't go up with the current resident demographic." "We're working on it," Keller replied, sipping a whiskey. "Stepped up patrols in target neighborhoods, quality of life enforcement, making it uncomfortable for certain elements to stay." "Not fast enough," the suit replied. "Developers are waiting on 3 blocks in Oak Heights specifically. They need vacancies to start renovations by spring." Isaiah recorded everything, his expression unchanging, even as he recognized they were discussing his own neighborhood. The following night he observed Officer Miller meeting his prescription supplier, a nurse who worked at the hospital. "Usual arrangement?" she asked nervously, handing over a paper bag. "Double this month," Miller replied. "Got some extra stress at work." When she hesitated, he added, "Remember your brother's DUI that disappeared could reappear real quick." The nurse surrendered a second bag. After cataloging these interactions, Isaiah expanded his intelligence gathering to the department itself. Using skills from a cybersecurity mission in Kandahar, he established a digital backdoor into the Lakeside PD network through an unsecured terminal at the Public Records Office. The access was limited, but revealed disturbing patterns. Crime reports systematically categorized differently based on the race of those involved, patrol resources heavily concentrated in gentrifying areas, and a clear disparity in arrest rates. Most significantly, he discovered that complaints against Officers Keller and Miller were routinely marked unfounded, without investigation, often by the same supervising lieutenant. Isaiah cross-referenced this information with property records accessed through the county website, identifying a pattern of real estate purchases following increased police activity in specific neighborhoods. The same development company appeared repeatedly with connections to city officials, including the mayor and police commissioner. A week into his intelligence operation, a complication arose. While monitoring police radio traffic, Isaiah heard a call about suspicious activity near his surveillance position outside Miller's house. He extracted smoothly, leaving no trace, but recognized the need for additional security measures. The incident also revealed that officers Keller and Miller appeared to have informants throughout the neighborhood civilians who reported suspicious persons with remarkable frequency, particularly when those persons were black. Isaiah adapted, changing his appearance and surveillance methods while continuing to build his intelligence picture. By the third week, he had compiled comprehensive profiles on both officers, identified their routines, relationships, and vulnerabilities, and mapped the corruption network that protected them. He learned that Officer Keller had gambling debts to dangerous people, debts temporarily satisfied through his arrangement with the developers, but always growing due to his compulsion. Officer Miller's prescription drug abuse was escalating, affecting his performance and making him increasingly erratic. Both weaknesses could be exploited. The final piece came when Isaiah followed the officers to their favorite bar and, using specialized audio equipment, recorded them bragging about Phoenix's killing. "Should have seen this guy's face when I popped his mutt." Keller laughed, mimicking Isaiah's expression. "Military tough guy went all weepy. Best part is he can't do shit about it," Miller added. "No witnesses, no video, just another complaint for the shredder." "Taught him the same lesson as the others," Keller said, lowering his voice. "Oak Heights isn't for his kind anymore. Property values going up means something's got to go down." Isaiah recorded it all, his face expressionless, as he added the evidence to his growing arsenal. Later that night, reviewing his intelligence, Isaiah identified a critical discovery. Officers Keller and Miller weren't just harassing residents as part of a gentrification scheme. They were also involved in a drug distribution network, confiscating substances during arrests that never made it to evidence lockup. This explained their protection from above and provided another potential pressure point. At his kitchen table, surrounded by evidence of corruption, brutality, and systemic racism, Isaiah finalized his operational plan. Phase 1. Isolate the targets from their support network. Phase 2. Apply escalating pressure to force mistakes. Phase 3. Expose everything simultaneously through multiple channels to prevent cover-up. As he reviewed the plan, Isaiah's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Jasmine. Found connection between K&M and drug distribution through evidence tampering. Source says they're involved in something big next week. Be careful. The message confirmed Isaiah's findings and added urgency to his timeline. The officers weren't just corrupt, they were dangerous and growing more so. Isaiah picked up Phoenix's collar, running his thumb over the tags still stained with dried blood. "Operational phase commencing," he whispered, the quiet declaration of a man prepared to bring the full weight of his specialized training against those who believed themselves untouchable. They had killed his dog, thinking he was just another powerless black resident they could intimidate. They were about to discover exactly whom they had provoked. The psychological operation against Officer Sean Miller began on a Tuesday morning when he returned home from night shift. Nothing obvious at first, just small discrepancies that nagged at the edges of awareness. A coffee mug moved from where he'd left it. The thermostat adjusted 2 degrees cooler. His mail stacked in a slightly different order than the postal carrier's usual pattern. Subtle enough that Miller questioned his own memory, but persistent enough to create a sense of unease. Isaiah observed from a distance, noting how Miller checked his locks twice before leaving for his shift the next day. The second stage escalated the discomfort. While Miller worked, Isaiah gained entry to his house using techniques perfected during close quarters intelligence gathering in Tehran. He left no evidence of breaking in, but made calculated adjustments to Miller's environment, rearranging items in his medicine cabinet, slightly relocating furniture, switching the positions of framed photos. Most significantly, he placed a small audio device that would produce occasional, almost imperceptible sounds during night hours. Subtle enough to be dismissed, consistent enough to disrupt sleep. 3 days in Miller's behavior showed the first signs of stress. He arrived at roll call with bloodshot eyes and a twitchy demeanor that his fellow officers noticed. His medication use increased, evident in the frequent trips to his locker and the persistent sniffing that followed. Isaiah continued the pressure, each intrusion slightly more obvious than the last. On day 5, he left the bathroom faucet dripping a kitchen drawer, partially opened the TV on low volume. Miller's paranoia grew. He began checking under his car each morning, installing additional locks, calling the alarm company about phantom alerts. Then came the delivery that shattered Miller's fragile composure, a small package left on his doorstep containing Phoenix's bloodied collar. No note, no explanation needed. Isaiah watched through high-powered optics as Miller discovered it, his face draining of color before he frantically looked around the neighborhood, hand on his service weapon. That night, Miller didn't return home, choosing instead to sleep in his car parked at a truck stop outside town, a significant crack in his psychological armor. While continuing pressure on Miller, Isaiah shifted attention to the officer's personal relationships. Using information gathered during surveillance, he identified Miller's extra prescription sources. An anonymous call from a burner phone alerted the hospital administration about a nurse selling medications. Isaiah made sure the evidence implicated only the nurse, not Miller yet, but it cut off his supply chain at a critical moment. Next, Isaiah targeted Miller's wife, a third-grade teacher unaware of her husband's corruption. An unmarked envelope arrived at her school containing printouts of prescription fraud documentation and text messages between Miller and a female confidential informant that strongly suggested an inappropriate relationship. Isaiah had specifically selected evidence that would damage their marriage without putting her at risk. When Miller returned home that night after 3 days away, his wife was waiting with packed bags and divorce papers. The officer's support network was crumbling exactly as planned. At work, Miller's deterioration became impossible to ignore. During a routine traffic stop, he drew his weapon on a teenage driver who reached for his registration too quickly. The incident was captured on a bystander's phone, and though the department tried to suppress it, the video circulated on social media. Miller began missing shifts, calling in sick with increasing frequency. When he did appear, his uniform was disheveled, his temper hair trigger. Isaiah documented every sign of decay, building evidence of an officer becoming unfit for duty. The final push came when Miller, desperate for his medication, after losing his suppliers, attempted to intimidate a pharmacy into filling multiple prescriptions. The pharmacist reported him triggering an internal affairs inquiry that Isaiah had carefully orchestrated through anonymous tips about an officer abusing prescription privileges. After 3 weeks of sustained psychological operations, Officer Sean Miller was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Phase 1 complete. With Miller temporarily neutralized, Isaiah shifted focus to Officer Ryan Keller, the more calculating of the two. The approach required different tactics. Where Miller was vulnerable to psychological pressure, Keller's weakness was financial. Isaiah began by gathering detailed intelligence on Keller's gambling habits, identifying the underground poker game he frequented every Thursday night. Using techniques that had once helped him infiltrate terrorist financing networks, Isaiah traced Keller's mounting debts to a loan shark connected to organized crime in a neighboring city. An anonymous tip placed evidence of these debts in the loan shark's possession, including Keller's patrol schedule that indicated when his house would be empty. The loan shark's enforcers paid a visit that left Keller's prize television smashed and a crude message painted on his bedroom wall. Financial pressure continued mounting. Isaiah manipulated Keller's digital footprint to trigger an IRS audit, focusing attention on unexplained deposits that coincided with known payoffs from developers. Anonymous letters to Keller's mortgage company raised questions about the source of his recent payments, freezing his refinancing application at a critical moment. Each action was calculated, untraceable, and designed to increase Keller's desperation. Unlike Miller, Keller responded to pressure by becoming more aggressive on patrol. Without his usual partner to moderate him, he began targeting black residents with increasing brutality. Isaiah documented every incident, building a file of civil rights violations while continuing to tighten the noose. The strategic turning point came when Isaiah anonymously exposed Keller's racist communications to his girlfriend's workplace. Keller had been dating a receptionist at a marketing firm with a predominantly black executive team. Carefully selected text messages showing Keller's unfiltered opinions about her colleagues appeared in the company email system. The relationship ended dramatically in the company parking lot, with Keller's girlfriend publicly denouncing him before a crowd of her co-workers, professionally isolated without Miller and personally abandoned. Keller's carefully maintained facade began cracking. The department, now concerned about both officers' behavior, assigned Keller a new partner, Officer Teresa Washington, a black female officer with an impeccable record. The pairing was intended to minimize Keller's liability while keeping him under supervision. What the department couldn't know was that Officer Washington had her own reasons to distrust Keller after years of witnessing his discriminatory practices. Isaiah observed their first patrol shift together, noting the tension evident in Keller's body language and Washington's professional detachment. While continuing pressure on both officers, Isaiah executed his most daring intelligence operation yet. Using a combination of digital skills from his cybersecurity missions and physical infiltration techniques, he gained deeper access to the police department's record system. What he discovered exceeded even his suspicions: a department-wide conspiracy to manipulate crime statistics based on race and neighborhood, deliberately targeting black areas for heavy enforcement, while minimizing response in wealthy white districts. The data showed a clear correlation between increased enforcement and subsequent property devaluation, followed by developer acquisitions. Most disturbing were directives from department leadership explicitly connecting policing strategies to the city's revitalization plan. The conspiracy went far beyond Keller and Miller, implicating the chief of police commissioner and multiple city officials. Isaiah's mission parameters expanded accordingly. The unexpected development came when Officer Washington made contact through an encrypted channel Isaiah had established for whistleblowers after placing carefully worded advertisements in the police union newsletter. "I've been documenting the discrimination for 2 years," she wrote. "But nobody would listen. Your pressure on Keller and Miller is creating cracks in the system. I want to help." Her inside information provided crucial context and additional evidence, including internal memos directing officers to focus enforcement on demographic shifting priorities. A potential alliance that could prove invaluable. As Isaiah integrated this new intelligence, a more immediate threat emerged. Jasmine Scott, the journalist who had been building her own investigation, received a death threat after publishing a seemingly innocuous article about policing patterns in Lakeside. The warning left on her car windshield contained details of her daily routine that suggested police surveillance. Isaiah now faced a tactical decision: continue the methodical pressure campaign against both officers or accelerate his timeline to protect a civilian ally who had placed herself at risk. The mission had reached a critical juncture, requiring immediate adaptation. Do you think Isaiah should prioritize protecting Jasmine or continuing his original plan against the officers? Comment number 1, if you believe he should protect the journalist first, or number 2, if he should stay focused on his mission against Keller and Miller. Like this video if you're amazed by Isaiah's strategic mind, and subscribe to see how this master tactician continues his mission for justice. Now the question remains, when you're facing a corrupt system, is it better to target individuals or expose the entire network at once? Isaiah stood at his operations center window, watching dawn break over Lakeside, while considering the tactical situation. The threat against Jasmine had forced a decision point earlier than planned, but adaptability had always been his strength in Delta Force. After careful analysis, he determined that protecting Jasmine and pursuing the officers weren't mutually exclusive objectives. Both could be accomplished by accelerating the pressure campaign while expanding its scope. His first action was installing discreet security measures at Jasmine's apartment and workplace. miniature cameras with motion detection window and door sensors reporting to his laptop, and a personal panic button disguised as a keychain. He briefed her on counter-surveillance techniques during an accidental meeting at the farmer's market, speaking casually about seasonal vegetables while slipping her the security devices. "Keep gathering evidence but vary your routines," he advised quietly. "They're watching, but so am I." With Jasmine's immediate safety addressed, Isaiah intensified operations against Officer Keller. The financial pressure campaign entered its next phase when Isaiah anonymously delivered evidence of Keller's gambling debts to his most dangerous creditors. Loan sharks who had been giving Keller extensions based on his position as a police officer received documentation of his mounting debts to competing criminal organizations. The calculated move eliminated Keller's ability to play creditors against each other, creating a coordination problem that forced immediate collection efforts. Simultaneously, Isaiah executed a precision strike on Keller's financial records. Using techniques from a classified operation against terrorist financing networks, he inserted irregularities into Keller's tax filings that triggered an automated IRS audit. The timing was deliberate, coinciding with Keller's mortgage refinancing application and creating maximum disruption. Each pressure point was designed to appear unconnected to the others, preventing Keller from identifying a pattern while steadily increasing his stress. The personal dimension came next. Isaiah had observed Keller's relationship with his girlfriend deteriorating after the exposure of his racist communications at her workplace. Now he escalated by anonymously sending select text messages between Keller and Miller discussing black residents to the girlfriend's predominantly black family. The carefully chosen messages revealed Keller's true character while appearing to come from a concerned coworker. The resulting confrontation occurred in public, with Keller's now ex-girlfriend declaring him disgusting before her entire extended family at a restaurant. Isaiah observed from a distance, documenting Keller's increasingly erratic behavior as personal and professional isolation took hold. Without Miller's partnership and with mounting pressure from all sides, Keller's facade of control began fracturing in visible ways. His uniform, once immaculate, showed signs of neglect. His patrol car remained unwashed. During traffic stops, his hand shook slightly when writing citations. Most telling was his response to Officer Washington, his new partner. Where once he had confidently directed their patrols toward black residents, he now deferred to her judgment, second-guessing his own decisions. The department leadership noticed these changes. In a move that indicated growing concern about liability, the chief assigned Keller to desk duty pending a routine performance evaluation. This isolation from patrol duties further limited his ability to intimidate witnesses or interfere with Isaiah's operation. While Keller struggled with his collapsing life, Isaiah continued gathering intelligence on the department's broader corruption. Using his cyber access point, he documented systematic evidence manipulation, racial profiling directives from leadership and coordination between police operations and developer acquisitions. The information formed a comprehensive picture of institutional racism weaponized for profit. The unexpected alliance with Officer Washington proved invaluable. During an arranged meeting at a diner 30 miles outside Lakeside, she provided internal documents that Isaiah couldn't access electronically. "They're purging records," she explained, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Getting nervous about patterns someone might notice. These are the originals before doctoring." The evidence included departmental memos explicitly directing officers to focus enforcement on neighborhoods targeted for demographic transition, and performance evaluations that rewarded officers based on arrest rates in specific areas. "Why are you doing this?" Isaiah asked, studying the black female officer whose career would be destroyed if her assistance became known. Washington's expression hardened. "My brother was beaten by Keller and Miller during a traffic stop 3 years ago. Internal affairs cleared them despite 6 witnesses. The system protected them then. I've been documenting everything since waiting for someone who could actually make a difference." Her testimony would be crucial when the time came for full exposure. With Officer Miller on administrative leave and Keller isolated on desk duty, Isaiah connected Jasmine with a federal contact from his military days. The former FBI agent now worked with a civil rights organization investigating police misconduct nationwide. This case could be the thread that unravels dozens of similar operations across the country, Jasmine told Isaiah during their secure communication. But we need irrefutable evidence that can withstand department denials. Isaiah assured her such evidence was forthcoming. The next phase required more direct action. Isaiah planned an elaborate operation centered around the department's annual fundraising dinner. Using Washington's inside information, he placed recording devices throughout the venue before the event. During the dinner, with alcohol flowing freely, department leadership and city officials spoke candidly about neighborhood improvement initiatives and removing problem elements from targeted areas. Every incriminating statement was captured with crystal clarity. Meanwhile, Officer Miller's administrative leave had done nothing to address his underlying issues. Without access to his usual prescription sources and with his marriage dissolved, he turned to street dealers for similar substances. Isaiah documented these transactions from a distance, building evidence of criminal behavior while noting Miller's physical deterioration. The once fit officer now appeared gaunt, his movements jerky and unpredictable. Miller's return to limited duty after 3 weeks showed a department more concerned with manpower than officer fitness. His reappearance created a new dynamic. Where Keller had become subdued and cautious, Miller returned with heightened aggression and paranoia. During their first patrol together since Miller's leave, Isaiah observed the officers arguing in their vehicle, Miller gesturing wildly, while Keller attempted to calm him. The partnership that had once terrorized black residents was fracturing under pressure. The breaking point came when Keller, increasingly desperate as creditors threatened his family, began suspecting Isaiah's involvement. Despite having only met the veteran briefly, Keller had noticed the correlation between Phoenix's killing and the start of his troubles. Acting on impulse rather than evidence, Keller broke into Isaiah's home during night shift. Isaiah, who had anticipated this possibility, was not present but had prepared the environment carefully. Hidden cameras recorded Keller ransacking the house, searching desperately for anything connecting Isaiah to his troubles. What he found instead was a precisely arranged display, Phoenix's blood-stained collar positioned beside Isaiah's framed Delta Force commendation and combat decorations. The message was unmistakable. The police officer stood frozen, finally understanding whom he had provoked. When Isaiah returned to find his home invaded, he activated a contingency he had prepared weeks earlier. Using Washington's inside knowledge of patrol patterns, he intercepted Keller alone in the department parking garage. The confrontation was brief but definitive. Isaiah applied techniques that had subdued terrorists without leaving evidence, immobilizing Keller against his own vehicle. "You murdered my dog," Isaiah stated, his voice eerily calm. "You thought there would be no consequences because that's how it's always worked for you. That ends now." Keller struggled ineffectively, his eyes widening with recognition and fear. "You can't touch me. I'm a police officer. I'm a Delta Force operator with 27 confirmed kills," Isaiah replied, applying precisely enough pressure to demonstrate his control without causing injury. "I've eliminated targets more dangerous than you on 4 continents. The only reason you're still breathing is because I want something bigger than revenge." He released Keller, stepping back as the officer gasped for air. "Everything you've built is already gone. Your finances, your reputation, your relationships. That's not my vengeance. That's just the beginning." Keller fled immediately, reporting the encounter to department leadership. His claims about Isaiah's military background and threats resulted only in concerned looks and suggestions that he consider psychological evaluation. Without evidence and with his credibility already compromised, his warnings went unheeded. However, Keller now understood the threat he faced. His desperate attempt to warn Miller only accelerated his partner's paranoia. the department leadership increasingly concerned about both officers' stability, coordinated with city officials to contain potential damage. Isaiah observed their reaction through Washington's reports and electronic surveillance. Contingency plans were being formulated, including potential termination with full benefits to silence both officers. The conspiracy was preparing to sacrifice its most visible tools to preserve the broader system. As Isaiah finalized preparations for full exposure, an unexpected development forced immediate action. His home, containing one of his backup evidence caches, mysteriously caught fire during early morning hours. The blaze, clearly arson, though designed to appear accidental, destroyed the structure completely. Department leadership and both officers visibly relaxed in its aftermath, believing evidence against them had been eliminated. "They think they've won," Isaiah told Washington during an emergency meeting. "That gives us the opening we need." What the conspirators couldn't know was that Isaiah had anticipated such a move. The evidence, apparently destroyed, was actually a carefully constructed decoy. His primary documentation remained secure in multiple locations, including a former military bunker outside town that only he could access. The arson merely confirmed the department's desperation and willingness to commit additional crimes to protect themselves. With Isaiah apparently neutralized, the department and city leadership gathered to celebrate their victory and plan next steps for the Neighborhood Transition Initiative. Their complacency created the perfect opportunity for the final phase of Isaiah's operation, complete and simultaneous exposure on multiple fronts with no possibility of containment or denial. The trap was set, and the conspirators were walking into it with confident smiles, unaware that justice was about to descend with the same precision that had made Isaiah Wells a legend in the shadows of America's most classified military operations. 3 weeks passed with no sign of Isaiah Wells. His burned-out home remained a charred skeleton yellow police tape fluttering in the autumn breeze. Around Lakeside, rumors circulated that the troublesome veteran had left town after the unfortunate electrical fire destroyed his residence. At the police department, Officers Keller and Miller gradually returned to their previous behaviors, though both remained jumpy, startling at sudden movements and checking over their shoulders with nervous frequency. Department leadership considered the problem resolved, focusing again on supporting the city's revitalization initiatives in targeted neighborhoods. Isaiah observed it all from his operational headquarters in an abandoned Cold War-era communications bunker 10 miles outside town. The concrete facility, decommissioned decades ago and forgotten by all but a few military archive specialists, provided perfect security for his final preparations. Inside bank after bank of evidence stood ready financial records showing coordination between police enforcement and developer acquisitions, audio recordings of racist directives from leadership, video documentation of Officer Keller breaking into Isaiah's home, and terabytes of additional material compiled during months of surveillance. "They're getting comfortable again," Officer Washington reported during their secure meeting at a truck stop 60 miles from Lakeside. Chief Brennan told Keller and Miller they're in line for commendations once the current unpleasantness dies down completely. Isaiah nodded, unsurprised by the department's return to arrogance. "Are they still following the containment protocol we discussed?" Washington confirmed they were. Internal affairs files on both officers have been purged. Records of complaints from black residents are being systematically deleted. They're creating a paper trail showing both officers as exemplary. Nisham. The department's attempted cover-up was playing directly into Isaiah's strategy. By altering official records, they were committing additional federal crimes that would strengthen the eventual case. Meanwhile, Jasmine Scott had connected Isaiah's evidence with her federal contact, creating a detailed brief for a civil rights investigation. "We're ready whenever you give the signal," she told Isaiah via encrypted communication. "My contact says this case could potentially trigger a pattern or practice investigation of the entire department." The final component fell into place when Isaiah received confirmation that the FBI's Public Corruption Unit had opened a preliminary file based on anonymous evidence he had provided through cutout channels. All pieces were positioned for simultaneous action. Isaiah reviewed the operational timeline one final time, confirming that each element was properly sequenced for maximum impact. The catalyst would be the department's annual Blue Shield Dinner, a private celebration where leadership, select officers, and city officials gathered to discuss policing priorities for the coming year. Thanks to Officer Washington, Isaiah knew every detail of the event's security protocols and attendee list. On the night of the dinner, Isaiah activated Phase 1 of his final operation. Using techniques from hostage rescue missions, he infiltrated the venue's security system, gaining control of all surveillance cameras. From his position in an unmarked van 3 blocks away, he monitored the arrival of every target: Chief Brennan Commissioner Wilson Mayor Harris, the City Council's Public Safety Committee, and developer Thomas Reynolds, whose company had acquired properties in transitioned neighborhoods. Officers Keller and Miller arrived together, both looking smug despite their lingering paranoia. Inside the private dining room of the Lakeside Country Club, the conspirators gathered for cocktails, congratulating themselves on another successful year. "Property values in Oak Heights up 30%, Reynolds was saying to the commissioner. "Once we complete the final phase of transition, we're looking at a $70 million development opportunity." Chief Brennan raised his glass. "Couldn't have done it without our special enforcement initiatives. Amazing how crime statistics respond to proper motivation." The room filled with knowing laughter. While the celebration continued, Isaiah executed Phase 2. Precisely coordinated raids began simultaneously at multiple locations: Officer Keller's residence, Officer Miller's storage unit, Chief Brennan's lake house, and the offices of Reynolds Development. FBI agents moved with efficiency, born of careful preparation, seizing documents, computers, and physical evidence exactly where Isaiah's intelligence had indicated they would be found. At the same moment, Jasmine Scott's comprehensive investigative report went live across multiple national news platforms, detailing the systematic targeting of black neighborhoods through coordinated police harassment and manufactured crime statistics. Body camera footage that the department had claimed was lost due to technical malfunction appeared online, showing dozens of incidents of racial profiling and excessive force, including the killing of Phoenix. The material had been secured by Officer Washington months earlier before the department's purge attempt. Inside the Blue Shield dinner, the first indication that something was wrong came when Commissioner Wilson's phone buzzed with an emergency alert. His face drained of color as he read the message, eyes darting to Chief Brennan with naked panic. Before he could speak, the dining room doors opened to admit a team of FBI agents led by Special Agent Daniels of the Public Corruption Unit. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated," Agent Daniels announced as her team moved efficiently to secure the room. "We have federal warrants for multiple individuals present regarding civil rights violations, evidence tampering, conspiracy, and public corruption." The stunned silence that followed was broken by Officer Miller's sudden move toward the side exit. 2 agents intercepted him immediately, taking him to the ground when he reached for his weapon. Keller simply sat frozen, years of arrogance collapsing into mute shock. Within minutes, the leadership of Lakeside Police Department and key city officials were being led out in handcuffs, photographers from multiple news outlets capturing their expressions of disbelief for tomorrow's headlines. While the arrests proceeded, Isaiah coordinated Phase 3 from his position. Officer Washington met with internal affairs officials from the state police, who had been brought in to secure the Lakeside Police Department's records before further tampering could occur. Jasmine Scott broadcast live from outside the police station as state troopers established control of the facility. The operation proceeded with military precision, each element perfectly timed and executed. As federal and state authorities processed the conspirators, Officers Keller and Miller attempted a desperate escape. Breaking away from the transport vehicle, they fled into an industrial area near the waterfront. Isaiah had anticipated this possibility, having studied both men's behavior patterns extensively. He tracked their movement through the security systems he had previously accessed, directing the FBI pursuit team while maintaining his distance. The officers separated Miller, heading toward the marina, while Keller sought refuge in an abandoned warehouse. Isaiah made a tactical decision, focusing on Keller while federal agents pursued Miller. Moving with the silent efficiency that had made him a ghost on battlefields across the world, Isaiah entered the warehouse through a maintenance access point. Inside, he found Keller frantically attempting to contact associates on a burner phone, seeking extraction that wouldn't come. The officer sensed his presence too late, spinning with his weapon raised, only to find Isaiah already within strike distance. A precise application of pressure to nerve clusters disarmed Keller without permanent injury, leaving him on his knees as Isaiah secured his weapon. "How?" Keller gasped, clutching his numbed arm. "We destroyed your evidence, burned everything." Isaiah regarded him with calm detachment. "You destroyed what I wanted you to find. Every move you and Miller made was anticipated and documented. Every attempt at cover-up created more evidence against you." Understanding dawned in Keller's eyes. "You were Delta Force." "Still am, in many ways," Isaiah replied. "The skills don't disappear with discharge papers." In that moment, federal agents burst into the warehouse, weapons trained on both men. Isaiah immediately stepped back, hands raised. "Isaiah Wells," he stated clearly. "Civilian consultant assisting with suspect apprehension." His prior coordination with Agent Daniels ensured immediate recognition, the agent securing Keller while acknowledging Isaiah with professional nods. Outside, Officer Miller had been captured attempting to steal a boat from the marina. The trap had closed completely, every target secured, with overwhelming evidence ensuring conviction. In the aftermath, Isaiah disappeared from public view, allowing Jasmine Scott and Officer Washington to become the faces of the investigation. His military training had taught him that the most effective operators were those whose contributions remained invisible, their impact measured not in recognition but in objectives achieved. 3 days later, he watched from a coffee shop across from the federal courthouse as the conspirators were led inside for their initial appearance. The case had expanded beyond Lakeside, triggering investigations into similar operations in neighboring jurisdictions. What had begun as justice for Phoenix had exposed a systemic cancer of corruption and racism extending throughout the region. As Isaiah sipped his coffee, Special Agent Daniels slid into the seat across from him. "Mr. Wells," she said with professional respect, "the Bureau would like to formally thank you for your assistance." "I'm just a concerned citizen," he replied, echoing his words to Officer Keller months earlier. Agent Daniels smiled slightly. "A concerned citizen with Delta Force training and exceptional intelligence-gathering abilities." She placed a business card on the table. "When you're ready, we should discuss your future plans. The Civil Rights Division could use someone with your particular skill set." Isaiah pocketed the card without commitment, his attention drawn to the television above the counter where Jasmine Scott was reporting live from the courthouse steps. The chyron beneath her read, "Police corruption exposed systematic targeting of black neighborhoods." "Will you testify?" Agent Daniels asked, following his gaze. "If necessary," Isaiah replied. "But this isn't about me. It's about a system that needs to be dismantled and rebuilt." As the agent departed, Isaiah remained watching the coverage, feeling neither triumph nor satisfaction. Phoenix was still gone. The corruption they'd exposed was likely present in departments across the country, and the fight against systemic racism would continue long after these particular conspirators were sentenced. What he felt instead was something he recognized from combat operations, the clear-eyed focus of a mission that had evolved beyond its initial parameters. The operation against Officers Keller and Miller had transformed into something larger, something that might actually create lasting change. As he left the coffee shop, Isaiah's phone buzzed with a message from Officer Washington. "Commissioner cooperating, naming departments in 3 other cities with similar operations. This is bigger than we thought." Isaiah nodded to himself, already considering the strategic approach to this expanded battlefield. The war hero who had returned seeking peace had instead found a different kind of mission, one that would require all the skills he had developed in service to his country, now deployed in service to justice at home. 3 weeks after the arrests, the leadership of Lakeside Police Department gathered with city officials and developers at the exclusive Ridgeline Club outside town. The private meeting, disguised as a charity planning session, was actually a strategy discussion on damage control. Despite the FBI investigation, they remained confident in their ability to weather the storm. After all, similar scandals in other cities had resulted in minor reforms and quick returns to business as usual. The assembled power brokers sipped expensive bourbon, assuring each other that their political connections would minimize consequences. "Senator Collins has assured me this will blow over," Mayor Harris told the group. "A few sacrificial lambs, some diversity initiatives, and we're back on track by spring." Chief Brennan nodded confidently. "Keller and Miller will take the fall, will claim they were rogue officers acting against department policy." The mayor raised his glass. "To weathering the storm and getting back to business." The clink of crystal was interrupted by the sudden crash of doors being thrown open. FBI agents poured into the room, led by Special Agent Daniels, whose expression remained professionally neutral as she announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, you are all under arrest for conspiracy against civil rights, racketeering, evidence tampering, and public corruption." The stunned silence that followed was broken only by the metallic sound of handcuffs. Across town, in a simultaneous operation, state police secured the Lakeside Police Department headquarters computers and records rooms. Officers unconnected to the conspiracy watched in shock as boxes of evidence were carried out by investigators from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Local news crews captured it all, broadcasting live as the department's entire command structure was dismantled. At the Lakeside Community Center, Isaiah Wells stood beside Jasmine Scott as they prepared for a press conference that would change the city forever. The assembled media representatives fell silent as they approached the podium, Isaiah's military bearing evident despite his civilian clothes. "My name is Isaiah Wells," he began, his deep voice carrying without effort. "Last October, Lakeside police officers Ryan Keller and Sean Miller shot and killed my service dog Phoenix during an unprovoked confrontation motivated by racial hatred." He paused, allowing the cameras to capture his composed but determined expression. "That killing was not an isolated incident, but part of a systematic campaign of harassment against black residents in neighborhoods targeted for gentrification." Jasmine stepped forward, outlining the evidence they had gathered: racial profiling directives disguised as quality of life enforcement, coordination between police actions and developer acquisitions, and the deliberate manipulation of crime statistics to drive down property values in targeted areas. What began as an investigation into 2 officers revealed corruption extending to the highest levels of city government, she explained, displaying charts showing the correlation between increased police activity and subsequent property sales to specific development companies. The most damning evidence came next. Isaiah presented audio recordings of department leadership explicitly discussing demographic transition strategies, including Chief Brennan instructing officers to make certain neighborhoods uncomfortable for existing residents. Video footage showed officers Keller and Miller bragging about Phoenix's killing, referring to it as another successful deterrent operation. Financial records revealed payments from developers to a foundation controlled by the police commissioner, coinciding with enforcement surges in neighborhoods slated for acquisition. "This evidence has been provided to federal authorities," Isaiah stated, along with testimony from multiple officers who witnessed this corruption but feared retaliation if they spoke out. The most significant whistleblower stepped forward. Then Officer Teresa Washington, still in uniform, her posture reflecting both courage and resolve. "I joined the police to protect all citizens equally," she said, facing the cameras directly. "Instead, I found a department weaponizing the badge against black residents to serve financial interests. Today marks the beginning of fundamental change in policing in our city. The press conference continued with announcements of immediate reforms, an independent oversight committee with citizen representation, mandatory body cameras with footage accessible to defense attorneys, and a complete review of all arrests and citations in targeted neighborhoods over the previous 5 years. As questions from reporters began, Officers Keller and Miller were being processed at the Federal Detention Center. Their earlier bravado had collapsed entirely, each attempting to secure cooperation agreements by providing evidence against higher-ranking conspirators. Miller, still suffering withdrawal symptoms, had already confessed to Phoenix's killing and a dozen similar civil rights violations. Keller, facing financial ruin and multiple federal charges, was negotiating through his public defender for reduced charges in exchange for testimony against department leadership. Their partnership, once a source of intimidating power, had dissolved into mutual recrimination. The warehouse confrontation that had opened our story occurred later that evening. After escaping during a transport mishap, Keller had fled to an abandoned storage facility on the waterfront. Isaiah, anticipating possible escape routes, intercepted him there. Their final confrontation was not one of violence, but of accountability. "When you shot Phoenix, you didn't just kill my dog," Isaiah told the desperate officer. "You awakened something I buried after Fallujah. Not violence, but purpose." The flash drive Isaiah held contained not just evidence against Keller, but the framework for police reform that would transform departments across the region. As sirens approached, Isaiah made his choice. Not revenge, but justice. The officer who had believed himself untouchable was returned to custody, while Isaiah slipped away to continue the larger mission that Phoenix's death had set in motion. 6 months later, the transformation of Lakeside was well underway. The police department operated under federal oversight, with Officer Washington promoted to interim chief pending permanent reforms. The conspiracy's exposure had triggered similar investigations in 12 other cities where developers and police had coordinated neighborhood transition strategies targeting communities of color. Isaiah established the Phoenix Foundation for Police Accountability, using his military expertise to train community oversight boards in investigating misconduct and implementing lasting reforms. The Foundation's first initiative provided body cameras to departments nationwide, with footage automatically uploaded to secure servers inaccessible to internal tampering. Ms. Loretta and other community elders served on the Citizen Review Board, their lifetime of experiences finally valued in policy decisions. Darius Williams developed youth programs that created dialogue between teens and reformed officers, building trust that had been systematically destroyed over generations. Isaiah rebuilt his grandmother's house, creating a community gathering space where residents could share concerns and strategies. The neighborhood remained diverse development continuing, but with protections for existing residents and affordable housing requirements for new construction. Perhaps most significantly, Isaiah adopted a new service dog, a Belgian Malinois puppy he named Justice. Together they visited VA hospitals and community centers, training other service animals for veterans and survivors of violence. The nightmares that had plagued him since combat gradually receded, replaced by purposeful work healing both his own wounds and systemic injustice. The final chapter came unexpectedly. Special Agent Daniels appeared at Isaiah's door one spring morning, offering a position he hadn't considered: civilian consultant for the FBI's Civil Rights Division, specializing in pattern and practice investigations of police departments nationwide. "Your skills are unique," she explained. "Military intelligence training, first-hand experience with discrimination, and a demonstrated commitment to reform rather than revenge." Isaiah accepted, recognizing the opportunity to create change at a structural level. His first assignment took him to a city much like Lakeside, where similar patterns had emerged. The systematic approach he had developed to expose Keller and Miller became a template for investigations across the country, his methodology taught at the FBI Academy. On his desk at the field office sat two photographs, Phoenix in his service vest, alert and loyal, and beside it, Justice as a growing puppy learning to fill the same role. Between them lay Phoenix's collar, no longer a reminder of loss, but a symbol of transformation. What began with the killing of a black man's dog by officers who believed him powerless had catalyzed a movement for accountability that continued expanding. Isaiah Wells had gone to war once more, not with weapons, but with evident strategy and an unshakable commitment to justice. The most lethal Delta Force commander had become something more dangerous to corrupt systems, an agent of systemic change who could not be intimidated, outlasted, or outmaneuvered. His grandmother's scripture remained on his wall, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." But beside it now hung another, "Justice and only justice shall you pursue." Do you believe what happened in Lakeside could happen in your community-type justice? In the comments, if you think we need more accountability in policing nationwide. Has this story changed how you think about the power of evidence and strategy in fighting systemic racism? Hit the like button. If you found Isaiah's methodical approach inspiring, and subscribe for more powerful stories about standing up against injustice. Thank you for joining me on this journey from tragedy to transformation. Remember, true change begins when those who seem powerless discover their unique strengths and use them not for revenge, but for justice that lifts an entire community. Isaiah Wells's story teaches us that true justice requires strategy, not just righteous anger. When faced with racist systems designed to protect the powerful, emotional reactions alone rarely create lasting change. Instead, Isaiah used his specialized training to methodically document, expose, and dismantle corruption through evidence rather than violence. The story reveals how systemic racism often operates through coordinated efforts between authorities and financial interests, targeting communities through selective enforcement and harassment. It shows that racism isn't just about individual prejudice, but institutional power structures working together. Most importantly, the narrative demonstrates that seemingly powerless individuals can effect profound change when they transform personal tragedy into purposeful action. Isaiah could have sought revenge, but chose instead to rebuild the system itself. His methodical approach, gathering intelligence, building alliances, and creating irrefutable evidence, offers a blueprint for confronting injustice everywhere. The transition from military skills used abroad to fighting domestic injustice reminds us that protecting American values sometimes means challenging American institutions. Phoenix's death became the catalyst for community healing, showing how personal loss can spark collective transformation when channeled through strategic determination rather than destructive vengeance. What would you do if you witnessed systemic injustice in your community? Would you have the courage to stand up like Isaiah, or would fear of retaliation keep you silent? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If Isaiah's methodical approach to fighting corruption inspired you, hit that like button to help more people discover this powerful story. Have you ever experienced or witnessed racial profiling or discrimination from authorities? Your story matters. This community is listening. Subscribe to join our growing family of justice-minded viewers who believe in accountability and positive change. And if you know someone struggling against seemingly insurmountable corruption or discrimination, share this video as a reminder that strategic persistence can overcome even the most entrenched systems. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Isaiah's transformation from grieving veteran to agent of change. Remember, true power isn't in weapons or badges, but in unwavering commitment to justice.